Welcome to What Happens in Vegas. I am your host, Neal Maligno. We had another week of NFL football, yet the Raiders still do not have a win. Let's talk about it. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me on today's show. It is unfortunate that we have to do this episode when we talk about the Raiders and they have not had a win yet this season. That's right. Our Raiders are 0-3, the only team to be 0-3 in the entire NFL. Did you think we were going to be saying that 3 weeks into the season? I know I didn't think we were going to be saying that. It's really disheartening, frustrating, stressful. Any word that you could use to describe a negative feeling, a depressed feeling, a sad feeling, that's where we're at right now. The Raiders, unfortunately, like for whatever reason you want to blame, are the only team in the league who has not figured out how to win a game. And actually, there is one more team in the league, but they're 0-2 at a tie. So technically, the Raiders are the only team 0-3, but they're not the only one without a win. However, they are very close to being the only team without a win. So this is very frustrating, right? Like going into the season, if you've been watching, the show since the beginning of the season, if you've been following on Twitter at Clock Dodgers on Twitter, if you watch on YouTube, however you're consuming this, you know that everyone has been excited about the Raiders going into this season, right? Like the team, the main players pretty much stayed intact. You added guys like Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones, all these reasons to get excited. You got the new head coach, Josh McDaniels, the new general manager, all these new coaches from New England who you're like, well, it's a championship organization. This is a team that has done things very well for the past however long you've been watching football. And so there was things to be excited about, right? Like there was excitement around the organization after, especially coming out of all these negative things that have been happening. Although the team has won here and there in the past recently, there was been a lot of like negative stuff with the Ruggs stuff, the Gruden stuff, like all these things, right? Like a lot of problems. So it was like this refreshing new reset, new start to the season, new start to the organization without actually like rebuilding because you kept a lot of the same players intact. In regards to guys like Derek Carr, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, some of the defensive players like Max Crosby, you had Hobbs starting to step up. So you kept all these guys intact. You just changed out the coaching staff and hope that, you bring in this winning coaching staff that what is there not to be excited about, right? Like these guys have proved in other places like New England that they are legitimately really good coaches and a good general manager that can, make the right moves to make a team, an organization be a winning one. And so it was exciting, right? And now here we are 0-3 and it's not good, right? Like it sucks. Nobody will sit there. No Raider fan will sit there and be like, this feels great. I'm totally okay with this. I understand the process. Like, I'm totally going to be patient about this, right? Like no Raider fan is patient. No player on the Raiders is happy. No coach in the organization or the owner or anybody are excited or being patient about this. Let's be honest. It sucks. There's no other way to put it. There's absolutely no other way to put it. However, if you go on to places like Twitter or you go into the comments on Raider videos, podcasts, whatever you're consuming Raider content at, you may be one of them. You'll see a lot of Raider fans saying, fire Josh McDaniels, trade Derek Carr, sell the team, this and that, right? Like I put out a tweet after the game where the people who are tweeting stuff like fire Josh McDaniels or retweet this if you want Josh McDaniels fired, like those tweets are just a waste of time. They're absolutely a waste of time. I get it. You're trying to like get up engagement and stuff like that, which I respect it. But in reality, to the real fans who are being emotional and or over emotional about it, or just making these ridiculous statements, like the Raiders are not going to fire Josh McDaniels after 3 games. Like that's not going to happen, right? So, so putting it out there, like fire Josh McDaniels now, like I get you're upset, but like what you're asking for isn't even reasonable. It's not going to happen. So there's no way that Mark Davis and the organization are going to fire a new head coach, one that they acted like was the greatest thing, the greatest move they can make. They're not going to fire him after 3 games. It's just not even a reasonable request because number one, there's nothing in life where if someone like sucks for 3 weeks at their job or like sucks for 3 days or sucks for whatever, like you don't necessarily have to go fire that person, right? Like that's a little quick to react. Like you're not gonna have a little bit of patience and trust in the process. Are you not gonna try to allow this person to build their thing to get everything going in the way they wanted to implement it? Like you have to give people time. You can't just expect greatness overnight. However, while I say that, I agree that 0-3 is unacceptable. It's not even an okay request. Like, hey, if we're gonna hire you, we might start the season 0-3. Okay, no, like we don't want that. Like that's not how this is supposed to work. All I'm saying to you is that while I agree that Josh McDaniels has sucked up until this point, while I agree that the losses are mostly his fault, what I'm telling you is he is not going to be fired after 3 games. So stop with the fire Josh McDaniels crap. It's way too early to even, attempt for that to be a real thing, because there is a point later in the season where if you're halfway through the season, you're towards the back end of the season and he has no wins, or it's like 1 or 2 wins, you can legitimately say that. And I might say you might got some credence. You might have some ground to walk on when you say that, because this organization at the top is impatient because they do think that they have players now to win, right? So right now it's just so you sound kind of it's very clownish, to say in 3 games, right? Like it's just not realistic. Say you're mad, say you're upset, say your things aren't good enough, say you're not happy with Josh McDaniels, say it's his fault, but to fire him is just a ridiculous statement to make. So put those emotions in check. It's an emotional response, and it's like corny to see. All right, so let that go. Is it his fault though? Yes, it is Josh McDaniels' fault. It is partially his fault for sure, mostly his fault for sure. And we could talk about all these things, but like at the end of the day, I just want to see the Raider fan base, because I'm part of the Raider Nation. I'm proud of it. I've been a Raider Nation ever since I was a kid. Like I hate seeing being the fans who have this over emotional reaction. I know every fan base does it, but obviously the Raiders have struggled more than many other teams at this point, right? Like in the recent past. So it just sucks to always be on that end of things where it's like, here goes Raider fans again, overreacting, getting crazy. Yes, Josh McDaniels has sucked. It hasn't been good, but you can't give a guy 3 games. How would that look to a new head coach? Oh, they gave a guy 3 games and then fired him. How would that look to the players who have tried to buy in all offseason and at training camp and at preseason and now going into the season? You fired the guy 3 games in. Like you guys are literally asking for there to be like a total mutiny, like this total like rebellion amongst the players and everything. You cannot fire a coach 3 games into his job. He's never. It's not like he's a year into his coaching with the Raiders or 2 years. He's literally 3 games. You want everything to fall apart in 3 games. That'd be the worst decision the Raiders can make. So stop being that lame Raiders, fan that tweets stuff like that. It's just corny. Yes, he has not done great. Yes, there's plenty of ways to improve. Yes, many of it's his fault. But to say fire him after 3 games, like you're literally just looking to rile people up and create engagement, which again, I respect you for trying to create the engagement, but it just looks weak. It just looks, corny to say it, because it's not good for the team, it's not good for the players, it's not good for the organization, and it's just not even reasonable. That aside, right? Like the whole Josh McDaniels stuff aside, like whatever. Let me just bring this up really quick so we can look. Here's the AFC West standings: Chiefs 2-1, Broncos 2-1, Chargers 1-2, Raiders 0-3. What's kind of funny is if you think about it, the AFC West as a whole isn't like crushing it, right? Like only 2 wins at the top. No one's 3-0. So that's a good sign. Like if you're thinking about the Raiders and the rest of this season, because I know a lot of fans have already checked out. It's over. There's no playoff hopes, and you're right. The chances are very slim. But just have a redeemable, respectable season here in the AFC West. Chiefs and Broncos are 2-1. We know the Broncos offense has not looked good. Their defense has been pretty good, but their offense has not looked good. So they're squeezing wins out here. So that's kind of like on a shaky ground, right? The Chargers have not looked good. Herbert's hurt. All these things are happening. They're 1-2. Nobody would have no outside of the Raider fan base would have predicted that the Chargers not be doing well or having a winning record 3 games in. So that's a welcoming sign. The Chiefs being 2-1. Again, they're at the top of the AFC West. With the Broncos, it is what it is. But the Raiders, honestly, because it's so early in the season, if they put a couple of wins together, and these other teams don't continue to win, they do take some L's here. The Raiders are really still kind of in the thick of things if they can turn the page and totally, switch this thing around. Because I mean, if you look at points for, the Raiders are the second best in the AFC West, points for, points against second worst. And so here, that's where the issue is coming, right? Like you're letting up too many points. You're scoring, not great, not totally bad, but like not good enough. And then you see a team like the Chiefs, 88 points, for. That's great, right? Points against, they're kind of better than the Raiders though. But they're kind of but they're able to outlast and get more wins than losses right now just because they're scoring so many points. When you look at the Broncos, 43 points for, but only 36 against. So their defense is what's helping them, do this. And the Chargers are just giving up crazy amount of points, and we still lost to them. So AFC West, this is where we're at. This is currently how the situation looks. Not great. 0-3. You can't be happy about it, right? You can't feel good about the playoff chances. It's playoffs or bust, championships or bust. But still, the Raiders can make this respectable if they change this thing, if it flips on the, on a, like, just real quick. If they flip this thing around real quick, and with a veteran team, it's possible. Again, and just they got to find balance. They got to find the right kind of balance in this team. They got to find the fight. They got to find the way to come out early and not fall off in the end, or vice versa. Like, it's just kind of been so far this season, if you think about the Raiders' losses, somewhat, competitive game against the Chargers. And that's the other thing. When people say, oh, the Raiders have been horrible to start the season, it's not even been competitive. I've gotten those tweets, right? When you look at the game so far, the Raiders could easily, the organization as it is, could easily spin this to like a competitive thing, right? Like they have been competitive. I actually got a tweet where someone said they haven't even been competitive. And, you're crazy if you think 24-19 versus the Chargers, 29-23 versus the Cardinals, and 24-22 versus the Titans. The organization would certainly spin that as competitive, just not ending in their favor or whatever, right? Like not a complete game, not good enough on on all quarters, not good enough on all ends of the ball. They'll find ways to spin that, like, hey guys, we're this close. I mean, so they're not going to fire the guy after that. So that's the first thing. This is where we are at in the standings. Obviously, 0-3. We know we're in last. Like, it's not even a conversation. Let's look at this game's offensive production. Derek Carr, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Right? Like, just not great. When you watch the game, it was very like slow and flat and sluggish. And so, while those numbers could look decent, if you won a game, you'd be like, not bad, right? Like over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 mistake with the interception. But you could reasonably say that could be potentially a win-in stat line on a guy. Crazier things have happened. So it's not terrible, but it's obviously nothing heroic going on there. The rushing game, this is a real big issue. Josh Jacobs had 13 carries for 66 yards. I mean, the average was good, everything, right? Like, I know Josh McDaniels likes to go, oh, well, we had 20 attempts or whatever he says. Like, we ran the ball. They're not running the ball enough. Like, they're just not. It's not happening. Like, there's drives where they go out there, even after a turnover or whatever, and it's like 3 passes, 3 and out, 3 passes, 3 and out, 3 passes, 3 and out. Like, Josh Jacobs is not running bad. Josh Jacobs is keeping the defense honest. Not even Josh Jacobs, like whoever they put out there is typically doing all right at the running the ball, but especially Josh Jacobs. Why you stop running Josh Jacobs after 13 carries makes no sense. And it's not like you go, hey, Neal, well, they're running Zamir White, or they're running Brendan Bolden a whole bunch, or they're running Abdullah a whole bunch. They're not doing any of that. They're just not running the ball. 19 carries total, and that counts with Derek Carr running 2 of them. That's not good enough. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to work. That definitely does not allow you. I mean, and I know they were behind, so they felt like they weren't in a position to run the ball more, to control the clock. But you still not running the ball enough, period. You can't just keep going out there with 3 and out drives, passing the ball every single time. When we look at the passing game, this was interesting, right? This was a fascinating thing coming out of this game. Mac Hollins with 10 targets, as much as Devontae Adams, as many targets as Devontae Adams. He caught 8 of them for 158 yards and a touchdown. His best game of his life by far. We're talking about Mac Hollins, who many teams in his opportunity so far in the league have been like special teams guy, like ace, like on the special teams, captain of the team. Everyone loves him. He's getting a real opportunity with the Raiders here to flourish as a wide receiver. It's awesome to see. From all accounts, Matt Collins is a super awesome dude, hard worker, and it's showing off here, right? Like you don't get 8 receptions, 158 yards and touchdown if you're bad. If you're bad at football or you're not a good wide receiver, like that doesn't really happen. That's a guy who Carr trusts, the offense trusts, everybody trusts, and clearly the defenses either are not respecting enough because of the other guys on the offense. They have to leave this guy one on one, and he's just making it work, right? So 8 receptions, 158 yards and touchdown is crazy. Matt Collins stat line. But it worked. I would not be mad at this if the Raiders won, if other guys here were getting more targets, if other guys here were doing better, because when you have 10 targets for Matt Collins and then you have 10 for Devontae Adams, so you have the same amount of targets across the best wide receiver in football and a guy who most teams were not even allowing the opportunity to be a wide receiver. That's kind of crazy, right? That's a little crazy when you see that. You got Darren Waller, who's arguably a top 3 tight end in the league. You can argue back and forth, top 5, top 1, whatever you want to say. 5 targets. So you have this guy who's a big time weapon, a big time advantage at the position, and he gets 5 targets. Meanwhile, Matt Collins has 10 targets. What's happening there? That doesn't make sense. What we know Darren Waller's capabilities are in this offense doesn't make sense. Keelan Cole, 4 targets. So Keelan Cole has almost as many targets as Darren Waller. Not making sense. Josh Jacobs had a good amount of targets, which is interesting. A lot of people feel like, they were concerned that Josh Jacobs wouldn't get targets in the passing game. He's getting them. So that's good to see just for Josh Jacobs, especially if you're playing fantasy, stuff like that. That's an interesting thing to see, although they're just not doing enough with him, even with that. And Brandon Bolden. So Foster Moreau has some catches. This doesn't work for me, right? Like this whole offense isn't working for me. This balance is not working for me. Devontae Adams, yes, should have the most targets. Darren Waller should have much more targets. Hunter Renfrow's not even in the game, right? Which opens up things for Matt Collins, which should open up things for Darren Waller because they should be getting more targets, not opening up on the field, but opening up the opportunities because they got to get spread out. That's why Keelan Cole's in the game catching more passes. Who he didn't do bad. That one pass interference call, that he drew was good. I mean, he was doing all right out there, but not awesome, decent though. Foster Moreau, like I said, he had some big plays, but overall, like I don't mind the Matt Collins thing. Like that might piss some people off that he had this game. I don't mind other receivers having a bigger game than Devontae Adams. Like that's gonna happen by nature. Like that's by default. Sometimes that's gonna happen because he's taking all the attention. But 10 targets, only 5 receptions of those 10 targets. We could look deeper into that if we wanted to see are those his fault? Are they Carr's fault? What's happening there? But at the end of the day, he's had a touchdown in every single game this season, which is cool. But they're mostly been like short passes underneath at the end zone, which is cool because it's great. It's showing Devontae Adams is helping the Raiders' red zone offense, or the red zone offense is just doing a little better maybe. But at the end of the day, he needs more production. And then you got to spread this ball around more to guys like Darren Waller and get other targets involved. Obviously, if Renfrow was here, he would be involved some, but he was out with the concussion. The running game has to run the ball more. And again, this is easy to say, harder to do for the team. I could just sit here all day and say what they should do, but the team knows this. The team will see this. Are they adjusting is the question. Are they trying to change these things? And obviously they'll say the flow of the game will dictate these things. Whether they're leading or losing in the game will dictate these things. There's all that what the defense is giving them, all these kind of things. But you have to be more aggressive. You have to be. I understand there's this thing where it's like, what is the defense giving us? But you have to be aggressive. You have to. Even if the defense isn't giving it to you, sometimes you got to try to take it. All right. Let's look at season totals really quick. Carr has 850 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 7 sacks on him already. The 4 interceptions obviously isn't great, but a lot of that was in one game. From the Russian side of things, Josh Jacobs is clearly carrying the ball more than anybody else. 42 attempts, 182 yards, which is I'm totally fine with. He has no touchdowns on the season. No running back on the team has a touchdown on the season, which is crazy. It sucks, but again, if you look after Jacobs, the next most attempts is 6 by Brandon Bolden. And he was out for a game. So nobody else is really carrying the ball here. Zamir White has his 1 attempt. Like people thought this offense was going to be way more balanced from a running back perspective, as in how the Patriots do it. It's not happening that way. And then in the passing game, you have the most targets go into Devontae Adams, which is totally correct. It's totally how it should be. Next, top 2 target guys are Matt Collins and Darren Waller. Obviously, Renfrow missed this game. If Renfrow played, you can assume it'd be Adams, Waller, and Renfrow as the top 3 target guys. So the Matt Collins thing is a little skewed because of that, but Matt Collins is the lead in yards on the entire team. He has the most yards. Devontae Adams, as I mentioned, has the most touchdowns because he's had 1 in each game, which is great. So this is just an interesting look right now at where the Raiders are at. And you see up top there, Divine leads the team in tackles. Harmon had an interception this week also, which was cool. Max Crosby got a sack. Chandler Jones, no sacks yet. Very frustrating. The dude is getting paid a lot of money. When they signed him, they made this very big deal about it. They made this huge deal about how important Chandler Jones is, how good he still is, this, that. The guy hasn't gotten there yet, right? Like we're 3 games in and he hasn't gotten there yet. So I hope that it's going to come soon, but it's not a good look. It's not helping, that's for sure. And it's a part of the reason why this defense is not stopping teams when they're on the offense out there. All right, let's look over at Raiders tweets this week. I think these are some of the most significant tweets on Twitter about the Raiders. Josh up here, you guys, his reputation in the Raider Nation community on Twitter is a little iffy. Some hate him because he says a lot of the things that are negative about the Raiders. Some people feel like he's never positive, this, that, but a couple of tweets we got in here from him. Raiders are tied for last in the NFL with 2 sacks. Cardinals also had 2 at the time of him tweeting that, but they were still playing. He said, this is what I was just saying about Max Crosby and Chandler Jones and the rest of this defense. Like, if you're not getting sacks, you're not making offenses uncomfortable enough, and they're going to score points. And this was an issue the Raiders have had, and it's continuing to be an issue that the Raiders have. Paul Gutierrez says, nobody likes losing. We all feel shitty. This was a quote from Josh McDaniels in his press conference. It's important to understand that, like I said, before going into that press conference, they said Josh McDaniels was talking, had a private meeting with Mark Davis. Things are not good, right? Like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, the Raiders aren't going to fire Josh McDaniels at 3 games in, like many are oddly asking for on Twitter and everywhere else, but they know it's not good, right? Like, that's the part of this. That's why he has this private meeting. That's why he's telling you that we all feel shitty. No one feels good about this. I've had conspiracy theorists in my tweets telling me he's purposely losing, he's tanking to replace Derek Carr, all these things. Like, it's happening, folks. 3 games in, 3 losses, and you're hearing conspiracy theories out of the Raider Nation. It's relax, guys. Another tweet from Josh DeBow here. Raiders are 0-3. The teams that beat the Raiders are 0-6 in their other games, getting outscored by 6.2 points per game. That's a crazy stat. All the teams that have beat the Raiders this season, all 3 have not won another game outside of that Raiders win. That might say a lot. That's definitely not a good thing. I do like Charles Woodson, Raider great, my favorite Raider of all time, saying here, say what you say about Russell Wilson and the Broncos. They are finding ways to win while they figure shit out. Very good point from Charles Woodson. This is one of the reasons why people are frustrated with Josh McDaniels and this organization is, yes, you are a new coach. Yes, you are implementing an entire new coaching staff. Yes, guys have to figure this stuff out. But at the same time, while you're trying to figure this out, while you're implementing the new stuff, you also have to learn how to win games. Like, there's no excuse, right? There's no like, hey, don't mind us losing a whole bunch, guys, because we're just trying to figure this out. No, you're going to have to find a way to win and figure it out. So I like Charles's tweet. Last one from Josh again. Raiders went 1 for 12 on third downs today. Only games worse with Carr at quarterback were 0 for 11 versus Washington in 2017 and 0 for 10 versus Miami in 2020. So terrible, 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 terrible. And this is the kind of stuff that Josh McDaniels was brought in to fix, to make better, not to be one of the worst 3 games that Derek Carr's ever had at quarterback for third downs. Not acceptable. This kind of stuff just doesn't work, right? Like, it's just not okay. There's no way to paint it in a way where you're like, well, this is, why, or, whatever. At this point, literally your only option is to be patient, trust the process, that quote, trust the process, because that's what the organization is going to do, right? Like, Mark Davis is not going to just fold this thing up and be like, not the coach we need. You're out of here 3 games in. So guys, stay positive, stay hopeful, keep pushing that, this thing is going to click. It's happened in the past. It could happen at any moment. The Raiders have a veteran team, a team that we know has won before, just even last year, in bad situations, right? The team is a better team from a player perspective, right? So all you can hope for is that everything that these coaches are implementing and that they're teaching and that they're trying to get right starts to click at some point in a way where the team fights. The team doesn't come out flat. Remember, I'm big into narratives. The Raiders don't have the Henry Ruggs narrative this year. They don't have they fired our, they banned our coach from the league narrative this year. They don't have those internal things like, hey guys, we got to rise above this and prove them wrong. The only narrative they have right now is you are the worst team in the NFL. You are 0-3. You are one of the only teams that have a win in the entire NFL. That is your narrative, Derek Carr. That is your narrative, Devontae Adams. That is your narrative, Max Crosby. That is your narrative, Josh McDaniels. You are 0-3, the only team in the organization in the league with that record. Shiny new stadium, new coaches, new best wide receiver in the league, great rush ends, a solid quarterback, really good quarterback in Derek Carr. And things just are not happening. It's on you guys, right? It's on you guys. And for fans, like I said, we just gotta stay positive, stay hopeful that things turn around. We've been through worse. We've been through crazier things, even last season alone. We can overcome those things. The team can overcome an 0-3 start. It's mathematically, data, statistically a problem, right? That they're going to overcome all this and turn this season around to be like a playoff team. You got to remain hopeful. Otherwise, why are you watching Raider games at this point? That's how I look at this. Am I going to watch the rest of the season? Because if I am, I'm not going into this thinking, let's see if we could, win 5 games. I'm looking at it like, can the Raiders pull this off? Can the Raiders really turn this thing around at some point? You wave the white flag. I'm not waving it 3 games in. That's just where I'm at. It is what it is. Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you hit subscribe. It's super important for the algorithm. Like, comment, drop in the comments your thoughts right now. What do you think? I'm telling you, it's Josh McDaniels for sure to blame, like this coaching staff, right? Like that's definitely the biggest issue for this team. But what do you think? Do you think there's a certain player that's holding this back? Do you think it's Derek Carr? Do you think what is your ideas on this? I'm really curious what you think. I believe most people are going to say Josh McDaniels, but I just want to see if there's anything else out there that's interesting in terms of what's the real issue here in Las Vegas. So on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe, like, comment. If you're listening on the audio version, thank you as always as well. Just make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave us a 5-star review. Again, for the algorithm, it helps grow this podcast. You want, if you're listening, I appreciate you, and I assume that you like what we're talking about here and how we get you guys involved and all that good stuff. So please, why would other Raider Nation fans not want to hear this? Please share it, tweet it out, leave the reviews. It helps us, it helps people see the show and see that it's a good show. And again, when you subscribe or on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, or if you're listening on one or the other, why not just subscribe to the other platform just for support? I appreciate it. Other than that, guys, listen, 0-4. I mean, I don't want that to be the thing, right? Like, I do not want that to be the thing, especially with the fact that the Raiders play the Broncos next week. We've seen their offense through 3 games. I don't want to be the defense that they score, they come alive against. And we've seen their defense. So this is a really good prove-it week, honestly, for the Raiders on both sides, because the offense can prove that they are a legitimate offense against a good defense, and the defense can prove that they're not the worst defense in the entire NFL by letting an offense that has not flourished flourish against them again, right? Like, this is a real proven chance. If you lose to the Broncos, you go 0-4. I mean, this thing can really start to snowball. So going 1-3 sounds a lot better than 0-4, even though they both suck. It's an opportunity to try to turn things around the right way. So next week is a big week, and we'll look towards that. We'll have another episode come out later in the week for that. But again, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate it. Let's go Raider Nation. And what happens in Vegas is Raiders football. I'm out.